Sometimes film promo can be a bit misleading, and sometimes that's good, because it can be a nice surprise, and we don't want everything spoiled by trailers. However, sometimes it sucks, because we signed on for one type of film and ended up being served another. So let's be prepared, as I'm Will for What Culture, and here are 8 upcoming movies that aren't what you think. 8. It's a 3-hour film noir with barely any Bruce Wayne, The Batman. The Batman is unquestionably one of the most anticipated films of the year, what with the 1-2 punch of Matt Reeves directing and Robert Pattinson starring as the Dark Knight. And while the trailers so far have done a fantastic job of selling the film as a moody tentpole that can stand toe-to-toe with Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight, the early word from test screenings suggests that Reeves' take is a very different beast indeed, and that it's less a set-piece heavy superhero epic than a full-blown noir film, complete with Batman giving a detective-style voiceover throughout. Given that the film's budget is surprisingly modest for the genre, at $100 million, this absolutely tracks. The report also claims that the Batman largely does away with the duality of Bruce Wayne and Batman explored in just about every previous Batman movie, as Pattinson spends the overwhelming majority of his screen time in the Batsuit. 7. It's not the last movie in the series, Jurassic World Dominion. The upcoming Jurassic World Dominion will be the 3rd entry into the Jurassic World sub-franchise, but more crucially the 6th film in the wider Jurassic Park series. Because Hollywood loves trilogies, and Dominion will bring the legacy characters together with the newer heroes, the implication seems to be that it will also deliver a climactic conclusion to the colossally successful franchise. We know that the film will focus on humanity having to deal with the various escaped dinosaur species thriving around the world, and it's fair to assume that by the end of Dominion, this problem will be resolved or otherwise contained. But back in May 2020, producer Frank Marshall suggested that this was all totally wrong, and that Dominion will mark instead the start of a new era for the franchise, where humans and dinosaurs must coexist on the mainland. 6. It's not like Get Out or Us. Nope. In total fairness, we know almost nothing concrete about Jordan Peele's new horror film Nope, but considering that Peele's 2 previous features have both been horror films steeped in social commentary about race, it's reasonable to expect something similar here. And while we don't have an official synopsis for the film, early rumblings are suggesting that Nope will break with Peele's formula to date and deliver a more heightened, spectacle-focused horror experience. The intriguing first poster indicates that the film may revolve around a sinister cloud descending upon a remote town. But what may be contained within the cloud is anyone's guess. If you're anticipating something similar in vein to Get Out or Us, you're advised to recalibrate your expectations. 5. It's more of an MCU movie than it seems. Morbius. We know that Morbius is part of Sony's Spider-Man universe alongside the Venom movies, but what implications does this actually have moving forward? Morbius trailers have made it clear that the MCU's Vulture will appear, but given that Morbius started shooting roughly 3 years ago, long before the Venom and Spider-Man movies began winking to one another, it's reasonable to expect that Vulture's cameo can be throwaway, right? However, Keaton confirmed last year that he would be shooting additional scenes as Vulture, which some fans have theorized is part of an effort to more intimately tie Morbius to the MCU. Basically, after the success of Venom Let There Be Carnage and Spider-Man No Way Home, Sony and Marvel Studios are collaborating to make Morbius far more intertwined with the MCU than initially planned. This could mean an overt setup for the Sinister Six, or simply a fleshing out of Vulture's presence in the film. But either way, it should hopefully mean that the MCU isn't a disposable fixture in Sony's own complicated Spider-Man universe. 4. It's an insanely graphic Marilyn Monroe biopic, not an Oscar bait movie. Blonde. We haven't seen a scrap of footage from the upcoming Marilyn Monroe biopic Blonde, but given that Monroe is being played by Ana de Armas and the film is being directed by the great Andrew Dominik, there's already an intense awards buzz surrounding it. Given the statuesque nature of Monroe and how much the Academy loves biopics, especially of Hollywood stars themselves, on paper this sounds like a slam dunk Oscar play for de Armas. But you probably shouldn't get your hopes up if early reports can be believed. Not that the film is bad, but simply that it's the furthest thing imaginable from your typical awards-baiting biopic of a famous person. Reports emerged last year that Dominik was battling Netflix over the final cut of the film, after Dominik surprised the streamer with a cut that was sexually graphic and would likely receive an NC-17 rating if released theatrically. Even Netflix themselves were reportedly under the impression that they had an awards film on their hands. Yet, in addition to being sexually explicit, Blonde is also said to be vague and typically art house in presentation. 3. It's not the DCEU's version of Spider-Man No Way Home. It's a soft reboot, The Flash. With the hype campaign beginning to build for the upcoming Flash solo movie, there are expectations among many that it will effectively be a Spider-Man No Way Home-esque metaverse event film for the DC Extended Universe. We already know that Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton's versions of Batman will appear in the film due to Barry Allen traveling back in time to prevent his mother's murder. And though the film has been in development for a good while, and the Flashpoint comic it's adapted from is over a decade old, it's unavoidable that audiences are going to expect the Flash to provide the same level of euphoric fan service that the similarly themed No Way Home did. But if claims made by leaker My Time to Shine Hello are correct, and their track record with MCU movies in the past has been rock solid, then The Flash is actually going to radically change the future of the DCEU. The leak also claims The Flash will establish a new order of heroes, centered around The Flash, Shazam, and Supergirl, with Batgirl set to join them once her own movie releases later this year. As wild and interesting as that sounds, it also seems primed to piss off a lot of DC fans who simply wanted The Flash to be a fun dose of nostalgia-fueled fan service without drastically reshaping the DCEU. 2. It's not the end of Michael Myers. Halloween ends. Don't let the cheeky title fool you. The upcoming Halloween Ends will absolutely, positively not be the final movie in the Halloween franchise. In reality, the new film has been fashioned as the climactic entry into David Gordon Green's trilogy of Halloween movies, and barring a disaster, it'll almost certainly bring a concrete closure to Laurie Strode's war with Michael Myers. But even if Michael quote-unquote dies at the end, Green himself has made it clear that the franchise will live on, because it's only inevitable that a new generation of filmmakers will end up making their own Halloween, likely a reboot or sequel in the future. Green said, quote, "I think Michael Myers, as far as I'm concerned, has transcended in movie monster culture to stand alongside the Wolfman and the Mummy and so many classic characters. I don't think he'll ever go away, and he's here to stay." The long and short of it is that Halloween's commercial viability has been rejuvenated by this new trilogy, and so Universal won't want to leave Myers dormant for too many years before dredging him up again for a new take. 1. It's not just a psychological thriller. Don't worry, darling. And finally, we have one of the year's most intriguingly mysterious movies, Olivia Wilde's follow-up to Booksmart, Don't Worry, Darling. We already know that the film will be a psychological thriller focused around an unhappy 1950s housewife, Alice, who discovers a shocking secret her husband Jack has been keeping from her. The brief teaser trailer released last year certainly set the mood, painting Wilde's film as an intense, surreal thriller that will explore timely themes of female emancipation and systemic misogyny. Except if you've been following the movie's production history, you'll be aware that Don't Worry Darling is a little more extra than that. Though Carrie and Shan Van Dyke's acclaimed original script has since been rewritten by Booksmart co-writer Katie Silberman, the Dykes script is readily available online for interested parties. And so, without giving too much away, Don't Worry Darling is actually far more of a splashy genre film than it appears. It's actually heavily inspired by one of the most iconic and successful sci-fi films of the last 25 years. It'll be interesting to see how the marketing treats this aspect of the narrative, and whether the full-length trailers will actually lean into it or attempt to disguise it. As ever, we'll have to wait and see. And there you have it, folks. 8 upcoming movies that aren't what you think. Feel free to drop this video a like if you enjoyed it, and drop me a follow on Twitter at YouSlyDogU. I'm Will for What Culture, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.